Okay. Good afternoon. I am calling to order the Planning Commission meeting. It is Thursday, December 29th, 2020. It's 4:30 in the afternoon. The first item on the agenda is the election of officers for 2023. Are there any nominations from the floor for president, or does anyone want to offer a slate? I need officers.
I think you've been doing a great job as chair, so I would
Do you
nominate
want
Ann for chair.
I agree.
Okay, are there any other nominations from the floor? John, I do have to do this 3 times, correct? Are there any other nominations for the floor? Are there any other nominations from the floor? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Vice Chair. Larry, would you take vice again?
I will if nobody else wants it, unless anybody else wants it.
You're doing a good job.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Are there any other nominations from the floor? Are there nominations from the floor? Are there any other nominations from the floor? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Larry. Secretary, that has been Kate. Michelle, Ashley, I don't know who the other replacement, or either of
Kate's
you.
done well if she's willing to continue on.
Can we nominate someone who's not here?
I think she would have to accept at the next meeting.
Okay,
Is Kate going to be on another term, or is
Yes.
her term continued?
yeah, so,
I'll nominate Kate to continue in that position.
I'll second
okay.
per her, pending her approval or whatever.
Okay.
Correct.
Are there any other nominations from the floor? Are there any other nominations from the floor? Are there any other nominations from the floor? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Kate. You will inform her. Thank you. Approval of the December 7th, 2022 meeting. Are there any other changes, amendments?
I'll offer a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. I'm waiting for my screen to go. Okay. Thank you. First item on the other is public hearing. Consider a request of John Hanson on behalf of Andrew Berg requesting a variance to allow a commercial dog kennel to be located at 210 3rd South Street, a distance of 240 feet from a residential zoning district. The property is legally described as South German Park west of former skating rink number 5754, except that part of Block 1, Lot 1, Depot, Second Edition, and also except the Polco Edition. City?
All right. The applicant for this variance request is John Hanson. The property owner is AMB Rentals LLC. The full legal description for this property is a long meets and bounds description, and it's attachment 7 in your packets regarding this staff report. The street address is 210 3rd South Street. Most of us probably refer to that property as the former Hyman Construction property. The property is generally located between German and Valley Streets and north of 3rd North Street. So some background information. Deadline for a decision on this application is January 30th, 2023. The land use designation by the comprehensive plan for this property is industry. Surrounding land uses based on the comprehensive plan are industry and park and open space to the north. To the west, park and open space and low-density residential. To the south, park and open space and industry. And to the east, industry and low-density residential. Zoning designation for this property is currently I2, that's the general industrial zoning district. Surrounding zoning includes I2 and the RT2, which is the traditional neighborhood single and two-family residence district to the north. To the west, we have RT2 and R4, which is the multiple family residence district. To the south, we have I2 and RT2. And to the east, we have I2 and RT2. Currently, the property is vacant. Current area uses to the north is vacant and the CP Railroad Storage Building. To the west, we have the City of New Ulm Recreational Trail, Pullman Lumber Company, the BMX track, and then single-family residences on German Street. To the south, we have industrial warehousing, and then the South German Park, which also includes a dog park. To the east, we have the CP Railroad and single-family residences, and those residences are on Valley Street. Public notice was provided to all property owners within 350 feet of the subject property and then published in the Journal on December 17th, 2022. Staff has received 2 contacts regarding the details of the proposal and its location. Neither of those contacts indicated being in opposition or in favor of the proposal. We did receive one letter from a property owner within that 350 feet who was in opposition to the request, and that is in your packets as attachment 9. So the site description and use. Reduction in required setback from they're asking for a reduction in a required setback for a commercial kennel from a residential zoning district. So the minimum setback for a commercial kennel from a residential zoning district, according to our zoning ordinance, is 1,000 feet. The requested setback from the nearest residential zoning district is 240 feet. And that zoning district that I'm referring to is actually off of Valley Street. So a total reduction in setback from the nearest residential zoning district would be 760 feet. Technically, the nearest residential zoning district is located to the west 100 feet, but that is the location of the New Ulm BMX track and skate park. The nearest residential zoning district where there are residential dwelling units, again, is 240 feet to the east off of Valley Street. The residences off of German Street are actually 440 feet from this property. Commercial kennels are only permitted in the I-1 Planned Industrial District and the I-2 General Industrial District, and conditionally permitted in the B-2 General Business District. In all districts where commercial kennels are permitted or conditionally permitted, the residential zoning district 1,000-foot setback still applies. There are use-specific standards that apply to commercial kennels found in Section 9.2 of the City Zoning Ordinance, and they are as follows. All buildings occupied by a commercial kennel shall be located at least 1,000 feet from the boundary of any R1, R1S, RT1, R2, RT2, R3, and R4 zoning districts. Again, those are all residential zoning districts. The commercial kennel shall be sufficiently insulated so that no unreasonable amount of noise or odor can be detected off the premises. Accessory use to a commercial kennel may include retail sales of products or related to household pets. The accessory use does not occupy more than 20% of the gross floor area of the principal building. And then lastly, commercial kennels are subject to regulations set forth in it's actually 4.59 of the city code. They need a commercial kennel license from the city. Project description. The applicant provided the following information on the proposed project. First, I will be operating a dog daycare / boarding / training business. The daycare is open from 6 a.m. until 5 p.m. The majority of the time, the dogs will be using the indoor play area with the following exceptions. One, depending on whether I would have them outside from around 8:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m., and then again, approximately 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. The same time would be used for dogs that are boarding. Boarding operates 7 days a week. On average, they get about 15 to 25 dogs per day. Over the holidays, they've had as many as 35 to 40 dogs. The applicant stated that they would have a maximum of 50 to 60 dogs if they ever reached that amount. The space would allow me to put on training classes and to help dog owners within the community. I also want to add that we do not allow dogs to sit outside and bark. If they continuously bark, they will be brought inside. And lastly, we do clean up after the dogs and the like things to smell, and we like things to smell and look presentable. So to date, there are 2 commercial kennels located in the city limits of New Ulm. They are the Minnesota Canine Club. This is currently the operation that Mr. Hansen runs, and that's located at 520 20th North Street. And then we have Pups Playland, and that's 2004 North Broadway. So if the variance request were to be approved, the applicant would propose to move the entire kennel operation. He currently operates at 520 20th North to the former Hyman construction site at 210 3rd South Street. The move would happen over a couple-month period as he's getting the site ready at that old former Hyman construction site to meet his needs. It should be noted that staff has worked with the applicant in 2021 to find potential locations in the city that would allow commercial kennels and then meet the 1,000-foot setback requirement from residential zoning districts. And we were unable at that time to find any developed locations that were available to rent or purchase that meet those setbacks. There are currently undeveloped properties that would meet the 1,000-foot setback requirement, but at that time, the applicant did not believe they could afford to construct a new kennel and a new building on an undeveloped location. We also looked at currently available developed property in the city, and all are within 1,000 feet of a residence. I shouldn't say residential zoning district. Just to clarify on that. It's a pretty short supply of industrial properties in New Ulm. We listed 4 unique circumstances that staff saw as unique circumstances with this request. 1, the current city dog park is approximately 1,200 feet from the proposed kennel location to the south. 2, between the proposed kennel and the nearest residential zoning districts are the CP Railroad and the BMX track. It is not likely that either of these properties will be developed into residential uses in the future. 3, the proposed location of the outdoor kennel space and play area would face the interior of the property, and there are existing steel buildings and the outdoor kennel location and the property lines to the east and west. So it would potentially reduce noise from going to the east and west from those outdoor play areas. There are a number of noise generating uses already within the surrounding area of this property, and they are variable in duration. Staff completed a findings of fact form, and it is attached as attachment 8. I could read that now, or I'll probably read that at the end before a motion is made.
Yeah, after I close the public hearing portion of the meeting, please.
Certainly, thank you. Project considerations. Again, in order to recommend approval of a variance request, the commission will need to adopt findings of facts and recommendations using the criteria as provided in the findings of fact form. Planning Commission and the City Council must take an affirmative finding on all variance criteria in order to grant the variance request. The applicant has the burden of proof to show that all their criteria have been met. We had 9 attachments to this application. We had the variance application, we had a site location map, we had our zoning map, site layout map, which does show the proposed outdoor play area. I want to note on that map, they would kind of be asking to do the outdoor play area in phases. Okay, so initially, if they were to use this property, they would like the outdoor play area to be right near where the current gate is into the property, if you're familiar with the property, and then go to the north until the building juts out, and they would use that area initially. They would continue, I believe, in the future to expand that play area if necessary. We have an attachment of 5, the 1,000-foot setback map. So outlined in that blue is all the properties within 1,000 feet. We have attachment 6, ground level photographs of the property. Attachment 7, full legal description. Attachment 8, staff's response to the findings of fact. And then attachment 9, letter from the resident on the variance request. In your packet, we have listed 5 conditions. I would like to add a 6th one, if you wouldn't mind. Those conditions, those recommended conditions would be that dogs shall be allowed outside generally during the hours of 8:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. and then again from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. 2 outdoor kennels shall be located as depicted on attachment 4 in the site layout map. 3, the outdoor kennels shall be maintained and kept as not to create any smells that could be offensive to the general public. 4, no noise being generated from the site shall constitute as a public nuisance. 5, dog pickup and drop-off shall be within the property and not off of 3rd South Street. And then 6, any windows or openings to the building where dogs are kenneled inside shall be closed at night to keep the sound from leaving the inside of the building. We did have 2 potential motions, one in support and then one to recommend denial of the variance request. That concludes the staff report. I should note that the applicant and the property owner are here and I'm sure would be willing to answer your questions.
Before I open that up, does anyone have any questions for John?
John, our current zoning, how is that established, or how many years has that been established? Maybe give us a little background. Is that 10 years, 12 years?
The current zoning for that property?
No, for the operation of a dog kennel.
Okay, so
For our little history, maybe.
Sure. So the 1,000-foot setback required for operating a commercial kennel from a residential zoning district is actually just a carryover from our previous zoning ordinance. So that's been in there a long time, and we carried it over. You know, one thing we've discussed as staff internally is that too far of a distance. It's a long ways. It really limits your options in town, and if the operators are doing a good job at trying to manage noise on site, that maybe is a little excessive. But we're not looking at changing the ordinance today. We're looking at the variance request.
Then you stated that they have to have an operation license from the city then also?
Yeah, there'll be a commercial kennel license
And
from the
then
city.
we check or do an audit that they're functioning properly, or let them know that they're doing good, or some things that need improvement?
Well, the commercial kennel license is, they simply go into the finance department and apply for that.
Okay.
As far as if we were to do a variance with this, we would, as the city, make sure that we are well aware and understand the conditions that are attached to this variance request. And if there are any issues that pop up, we can always go back to those conditions to make sure those conditions are being met.
Okay.
Anyone else? I have one question about the recommended condition number 5. Why don't you want them dropping off on 3rd? Isn't that the entrance to where's?
So if you're familiar with the site,
Right.
there is
That faces 3rd, doesn't it?
yes, there's a
Thank you.
curb cut on 3rd that goes into the site, and then there's a gate.
Okay, yes.
And there is off-street parking that is available right to let's call it the west of the building. There's a gravel parking area, and then right next to the building, there's actually 3 more parking stalls approximately.
Okay,
3 or 4 more parking stalls. So it'd just be our preference that if there's an opportunity to have off-street parking for patrons, that they use it.
my question following that is if there's a class, are you allowing classes to park on 3rd?
I would say yes.
Because the parking stop for 4 cars, if you have 10 people in your class,
Right. This condition was supposed to be specifically for pickup and
drop off? Okay, so not covering classes, or do we need to address that?
You know, that would be a good idea to address that specifically, that maybe this would not include classes being taught
Okay,
at the location.
Well, because that was when I was down there, my tendency is to visit these sites, and it was hard for me to imagine where people were going to park if he was going to have dog obedience classes or training classes there that weren't one-on-one.
Sure.
Okay.
Or retail.
Yeah,
Maybe it could just be rephrased to dog boarding and daycare pickup. That would be
yeah,
easy. Pickup and
okay.
I do have one question around I don't know if now is the time for it, on the first recommended condition of the dogs shall be allowed outside during the hours of, and so on. Is that really necessary? I mean, like the BMX bike track is going at all hours. I just don't feel we really need to put parameters around that, unless you want to say maybe dogs won't be allowed from 10 PM to 8 AM outdoors, but
It'd be a matter of trying to enforce it, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, then if someone says, oh, they were out there 10 minutes earlier or
well, and then what if
something,
he's
you know?
doing a class that's in the evenings, then you're gonna have people calling of, oh, the dogs were outside at from 5 to 6. Well, that was a class of it. That seems like a nightmare and too restrictive.
So a couple of things. I would like the word generally to be in that statement rather than sticking to those exact hours, because the applicant might find that, well, if we go a little bit before, a little bit later,
Would work,
it would work a little bit better.
right.
But I think what we were trying to do here, and what the applicant was trying to show in his application, that the dogs aren't outside continuously. They're out during certain periods of time, because I believe the operator is there watching the dogs as they're outside and then bringing them back in. So that was actually part of his application, and that's why we included that as a condition.
Okay, and you're going to be doing the altering of these conditions prior to the applicant signing any papers if this is approved? And
Yeah, I mean,
so generally, you're adding the word generally and changing the parking?
Yes.
Adding the, okay.
I guess I still just, if it's that loose with it anyway, do we really even need that condition in there? Like,
Do you want to eliminate that condition?
yes.
Okay, we can talk about that at the motion. That would be part of the motion then?
Sounds good.
When it comes to that, if it comes to that, all right? Does anyone else have questions about the conditions before I open it for John to come to the floor or any other questions? Did you want to address the group or do you want us just to continue? But you need to come to the microphone, state your name and address, please.
John Hanson, owner of Minnesota Canine Club. My address is 2201 North, well, my business, do you want my business or my?
It doesn't matter.
2201 North Broadway
Okay.
Street. So, yeah, the way it runs right now is boarding is 7 days a week. I have certain drop-off and pickup times. And the boarding dogs are, throughout the week, they're let out with the daycare dogs. And the daycare dogs, my hours of operation, like John said, from 6 to 5. And it's important to note that basically the conditional hours that we're talking about, them being outside and stuff, now if I got this, I would have way more indoor play area too. So they wouldn't have to be outside as much as they are right now, because the space inside would allow plenty of playtime and an area for them. Other than that, just we're trying to keep a neat, clean area, and we're trying to help community members within this town, overcome their lack of knowledge sometimes of the dogs, you know what I mean? And I feel like doing this and being able to put on classes and things like that, it's going to help everybody, even the people that are like, not so fond of dogs. They should, I'm hoping that people would be on board so that they're going to be like, okay, at least somebody's trying to take control and help the community members out here with the dog that is barking in their neighborhood. Maybe, then I can teach people what I would do, and the right techniques and everything. Other than that, do you guys have any other questions?
I do.
for
I
me?
have a few.
Okay.
I have gotten calls from constituents within the city about the noise level. And I'm also a dog owner, so I'm familiar with the kennel operation, that, one of the kennel operations that is already exists here in New Ulm. And these hours and everything seems to be already what is normal for the kennel people that they have the outside play hours. And they're concerned about the noise. You have an attendant out in the lot when the dogs are in the outside play area, they're not left unattended?
Right,
Okay.
yep.
The other question that I had so that if you do have a barker, you know which one it is and you can address that issue, and I'm assuming that's how it's done in the existing kennel, was the security, because these dog kennels are not attended by people every day. They're not monitored. You know, at evening you go home and the dogs are there by themselves.
Yes.
And
yeah.
is there a monitor system so that if there's, it's you're putting enough insulation to protect it from the noise and that? Okay, so you're addressing the noise issue of that, and I'm
I also
assuming
have
there's.
cameras on them too.
Cameras, okay, and that's what my other question was, there's an alarm system if there should be a fire or anything, so that I was getting questions to whether this was, the building was protected in case you had dogs that there was a fire and they needed to get
Right.
out, okay. Those were my questions. Is there any other questions?
I guess, John, received a phone call, just an individual read it in the paper, but I mean, with you having an increase of dogs, is there a per number, like employees per dog, like ratio? You've indicated, is it just you as a sole proprietor, or do you have employees?
Right now, like I have one employee, and then I have also I have a son that helps me out. He'll come and help me out after school and everything. But yeah, I mean, I would like to have one person bringing in or sending in the dogs, and another person out making sure, monitoring that they're doing, all right and everything. Like you said, if there is a barking dog or anything like that, we're going to be able to see which dog it is. More than likely, it's either got anxiety or it's bored. So we'll just take it inside, and we usually just get it occupied, either play with it, or sometimes it just needs a break and has to go into the kennel. So
Training is, it's a big deal, because, I mean, I had to go to Mankato to get training done for my dog. Didn't do much good, but that's where I had to go. But there were a lot of people there, and so you have enough parking in the area, I think, because you have street parking. But how much outdoor training are you going to be doing with them? Because all that I'm familiar with is indoor training, and I think
so-
you did indoor training
Yep.
here too, correct?
yeah, so in the past, my classes included, well, first off, before we start the classes, everybody comes in and has an individual session with me,
Okay.
so that everybody's kind of on the same page during the first session, class section.
Okay.
And then we do a couple class sessions inside, but then I like to take them out and about, and we actually leave the facility and go to like a city park, or we might walk them downtown, or take them, I've had people let us on their patios, other business owners and everything. So I'm trying to put them in real life situations.
Are you the
And-
one that takes your dog to the restaurants?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yep. So I'm trying to like help people out in real life situations, so that they do feel more comfortable bringing their dogs out and making it a more dog friendly town.
Okay. Okay.
So
Thank you.
yep. So
Anyone else have any questions for John?
John, that area is currently fenced in, correct, from the old Hyman construction yard?
yes.
I know some dogs are canine Houdinis. Is it in good enough repair that it's going to keep any dog from sneaking underneath or jumping over?
Well, that's kind of why we want to do it in sections.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I want to start with a smaller one, and as we go, get that all repaired and
Right.
and up to code and good. So,
Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
So
All right.
any others?
If there are no more questions, comments, I'm going to close the public hearing portion of this and ask John to go on to the attachment with the questions and answers. Yes, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize there was anyone else. Then we're still open on the public hearing portion.
Name's Andrew Berg, I'm property
Okay.
owner here.
Yes,
And one of your comments was always parking too. And right now, if you've been out during the winter and the snow's been in, it's hard to tell. But the New Ulm southwest section of that lot, right before the very long shed that's kind of open and looks cruddy right now.
those
There
metal sheds.
is, yeah, there's a
Okay.
big section of parking there that was gravel and stuff that possibly pave in the future. I'll look into doing options there. And the other thing with noise too, a good point of the way the building's built and where he's thinking of putting the kennels and everything, it's all masonry and stone, so it should hold back a lot of the sound from any dogs inside at the time while they're there too, so.
Thank you. I think they were concerned mainly about the outside noise too, but I'm sorry, was there anyone else? Then the public hearing is closed, and John, you want to move to your fact-finding sheet?
Sure.
Thank you.
Do you want me to read the questions?
Would you like me to read them, or do you want,
It's always more fun that way.
pardon me?
It's always more fun that way.
If I read them, all right. I'll get my bifocals and focal. Is the variance in harmony with the purpose and intent of the city's zoning ordinance?
Staff responded, yes. The 1,000-foot setback for commercial kennels is designed to minimize noise generated from the site to nearby residential zoning districts. This site has buildings to the east and west, which should reduce noise from leaving the property. There are no residences to the north and south of the property.
Thank you. Is the variance request consistent with the city's comprehensive plan?
Staff responded, yes. The applicant is proposing a use allowed in industrial areas in an area designated in the comprehensive plan as industry.
I do want to mention that if the commission has any questions, or please break in, or if you disagree. Does the proposal put the property to use in a reasonable manner not permitted by the city's zoning ordinance?
Staff responded, yes. The applicant is proposing to use a vacant industrial property for an industrial type use. The property is surrounded by other industrial uses that generate noise and may also have the potential to reduce noise generated from the commercial kennel use because of their location.
Does the proposal impair adequate supply of light and air to adjacent properties, unreasonably increasing congestion of public streets, increase the danger of fire, substantially diminish property values, and will not be materially detrimental to the public health, safety, and welfare, or injurious to the property of improvement in the zoning district or neighborhood in which the property is located?
Staff responded, no, it is not anticipated that there will be more traffic generated from the use of the property as a commercial kennel than if it were to remain a contractor's yard. The remaining criteria that were just mentioned are not likely to be affected by the commercial kennel.
Okay. Are the physical surroundings, lot size or shape, topography, water conditions, or other physical conditions unique to the property?
Staff responded, yes. The proposed outdoor play area for the dogs faces the interior of the property. The property has existing buildings to the west and to the east and is open to the north and south. There are buildings to the east and west which should reduce the amount of noise leaving the property.
The unique circumstances related to the property do not generally apply to other properties or buildings in the zoning district vicinity?
Staff responded, yes. In our industrial zoning regulations, we have additional setbacks from residential zoning districts for uses that have the potential to generate higher intensity noise from the property. Concrete, asphalt, and rock crushing also requires a 1,000-foot setback from a residential zoning district. Recycling, scrap, and salvage yards and metal milling facilities require a 500-foot setback from a residential zoning district. A commercial kennel is not likely to generate the same amount of noise that those types of uses would.
Okay. The unique circumstances related to the property were not created by the owner or the property, of the property?
Staff responded, yes, the applicant is proposing to place a commercial kennel closer to a residential zoning district than the required 1,000 feet. Good operator should be able to manage the noise levels. They have been unable to find a site in New Ulm that meets their needs and meets the zoning setback requirements.
Will the variance alter the essential character of the locality?
That should actually be no. It is not anticipated that the commercial kennel will change the essential character of the locality given its operational characteristics. There is already a dog park located approximately 1,200 feet to the south of the site.
Is the variance request the minimum amount necessary to eliminate the practical difficulties? The light shine. This thing, and it's like, okay.
Staff responded, yes, the applicant has considered numerous other properties in the city, but was unable to find one that already is constructed, is available, and meets the 1,000-foot setback requirement.
Do economic conditions alone not allow the reasonable use of the property? Not allow for the reasonable use of the property?
Staff responded, no, it's our understanding that the applicant has considered multiple other sites and has been able to find one that meets his requirements. This site was not selected because it was the most inexpensive.
Okay, I need a motion then for someone to either approve or deny the fact-finding report.
I'll offer a motion to approve the findings of facts.
Second.
Did you,
I second.
thank you. I have a motion and a second. Does everyone agree with the findings of the fact-finding report?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Okay, it is received then. So then I need to go back and request a motion.
Motion to approve the request as stated in the request for variance and the conditions discussed with the modifications
To the
also
conditions?
discussed. Yeah.
Just to be clear, which is eliminating the first condition and adding generally to, which one was that, John?
Well, actually, if we're eliminating the first condition, we don't need to worry
We
about
were going to say generally.
gotcha.
Generally
I'm
in the
sorry.
first.
Would you feel more
What was it, the pickup drop-off or something we were going to add to the fifth one?
Ashley?
on the first condition? Would you feel more comfortable if it was, instead of being eliminated, changed to the dogs will not be allowed outside for a continuous basis of over 3 hours or something like that?
Well, actually, I guess what my preference would be that they're outside during, let's call it the working day, and not at the period of time in the evenings or early mornings when people are at their homes. So, you know, if it was past 4:30 or something like that.
Generally.
Generally past 4:30 p.m.
So
Madam Chair,
Yes, Dave?
could you maybe ask Mr. Hanson what he thinks would be appropriate?
Mr. Hanson, can you step to the microphone, please, and ask what you think would be appropriate, or tell us what you think would be appropriate for condition 1, which is dogs shall be allowed outside only during the hours of 8:30 to 10:30, and then again from 2 to 4?
Right. So, and I thought about this too. I would think from the hours of generally 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning until about 5 p.m.
Only my question with that is just thinking about the people who might not know generally dog schedules, or I feel like this is a little too vague in that if you let the dogs out to use the restroom in the evening hours, is someone going to call and say, well, the dogs are outside? Or if there's a training class going on in the evening hours and they are all outside doing practicing an exercise, are we going to get phone calls? Well, now the dogs are outside. That's what makes me nervous about limiting the time hours.
That's what the term generally covers, though, I believe.
Well, I believe Ashley makes a good point. If we do you often have them out in
I-
the evening to let them outside?
Yep. I let them outside in the evening usually for about 45 minutes to an hour,
Okay.
just to use their rest, to go to the bathroom and to, make sure they're getting plenty of water and staying hydrated and everything, and get out that little bit of energy that they have left before bedtime, I guess.
That's why I would err on the side of saying not continuous for instead of putting time restraints around it.
Right, yeah, if you
Yeah.
limited the amount of exposure but didn't limit when the exposure was,
Right.
then you give yourself the greatest latitude, plus that way it precludes any, fallout relative to.
I'm going to bring up a Roberts rule here and say we have a motion without a second on the floor and have an open discussion.
I second the motion.
Okay, now we can discuss it. It was just my being very technical. Thank you.
That's dependent on weather. I mean, if it's super hot, if it's raining, you're not going to send a bunch of dogs out in the rain, I wouldn't think.
I was
Make your,
gonna say, you're changing the location of how you do, of where
Yeah.
you do business, but not how you do business.
Right.
And generally, I don't know of, unless anyone else is familiar, that there's been complaints with how John's ran his other businesses. So if it's just the location we're given the variance on, I don't think that we should stipulate how John runs his business if his business is running just fine in other locations. That's kind of my personal.
the only thing that might make a difference, Dave, is the fact that his business is currently not located that close to residential areas as it would be in the former Hyman building.
Well, and there are conditions on most variances that we're presenting, and I kind of agree with you to the point for the length of his business and how he does that. I mean, I do think that we have to have the variance or the condition as far as odor and that kind of thing, so I think I would,
Well, if you just go, 6 blocks down the road where that granary is right along Valley.
I
that thing
agree.
smells a hell of a lot worse than any dog kettle's gonna smell.
Recommend that the first condition be changed to state that the dogs will not be outside continuously more than 3 hours at a time and not past the hours of 10 a.m. to 6 a.m. Or 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. They will not be outside. That would cover your evening hours.
what
They
is the
won't be out
time of the
evening.
city? 7 o'clock in the morning, isn't it? And not 6 o'clock in the morning? The noise ordinance is what is the noise ordinance?
7 to 10 during weekdays, and then it's
10 p.m. to 7 a.m.?
Just make it consistent with our.
Yeah, match that.
10 to 7? 10 to 7.
That sounds good.
And one last thing I forgot to mention before is most of the time, if the dogs are barking, it's usually during drop-off and pickup times when they see the people come in. And here, we're eventually going to get to where the dogs don't even see the people coming in and dropping off and picking up. So that's what makes them excited, and they start barking, and things like that. Other than that, it's very rare that they're just barking their heads off or anything like that. So.
Okay. Okay,
So again, just for clarification, was there going to be any wording difference in number 5 as well, or not? Specifying that it's daycare or boarding drop-off and pickups?
right.
that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. Okay, with these condition changes, I need him, I'm going to call a vote because we're denying this and we're going to I'm going to call for a new motion. Is that everyone agreeing to that? Because I have to deny the conditions that are here unless we
No,
can change them.
we're
with-
just-
I
we're
can
changing
change them?
it,
Okay,
yeah.
then I'm going to let it go. Your nominee, the proposal was with conditions, as now stated. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, John.
When does this come before the city council?
Go to the city council January 3rd, so next Tuesday at 4:30 p.m.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is consider the amendment of Chapter 6 and Chapter 9 of Appendix A zoning ordinance to the city code to allow wholesale warehousing distribution as a conditional use in the B3 Community Business Zoning District and to establish appropriate use specific standards for this land use. Staff report.
Okay, so the applicant here is actually the Community Development Department. Before we get into the staff report, I want to kind of emphasize that we're not talking about a specific property, a specific location. We're talking about the B3 Community Business Zoning District as a whole. So keep that in mind as we go through this and have this discussion.
Just so you gentlemen know, you could, if you want to leave, you can. You don't have to stay for the rest of the meeting. It's up to you. You're welcome, but you don't have to stay.
Okay. So again, property owner is not applicable, legal description not applicable, and street address is not applicable because this applies to multiple properties in the city. Deadline for a decision, there isn't one. So the land use designation by the comprehensive plan for this type, for the B3 would be business. Surrounding land uses for our business districts in the comprehensive plan are low, medium, and high density residential, mobile homes, downtown, airport, industry, public, semi-public, and park and open space. The zoning designation we're discussing here is the B3 Community Business District. Surrounding zoning for B3 districts include the Airport Safety Zone A, R1, the Single and Family Residence District, R3, the Medium Density Residence District, R4, High Density Residence District, RT1, Traditional Neighborhood, Single Family Residence, the B1, Limited Business Zoning District, B2, the General Business District, I1, Planned Industrial, I2, General Industrial, and then I3, Limited Industrial, and lastly, the AOS, the Agricultural Open Space. So we cover almost every zoning district type. Current site uses for the B3 include retail and service types of land uses. Current area uses, again, we're talking about multiple locations in the city, so it varies by location. Public notice was published in the December 17th, 2022 edition of the Journal. As of yet, staff has not received any comments regarding this proposal. Project description. So Mr. Eric Bodie appeared before the City Council at its December 20th, 2022 meeting to notify them that he was proceeding with plans to purchase the Target property at 1910 South Broadway. Target vacated the building on or about January 31st, 2016. The building size is approximately 90,000 square feet. Mr. Bodie has provided the following information on this project. He asked the City Council to amend the city's zoning ordinance to allow warehousing as a conditional use in the B3 zoning district. The request would be similar to the one previously made by the August Brewing Company in April of 2020. He would propose to use a majority, if not all, of the building for warehouse purposes for the next 36 months. Warehouse space is in demand and would create a use for the property now. He stated that it was not a good economic time for commercial development, and it will take some time to secure commercial tenants and make necessary improvements. He hoped to be able to convert a portion of the front of the building nearest the parking lot into retail/commercial in the near future. There are no guarantees that he will be successful. Possible future breakdown of the building would be a 60,000 square feet of warehousing space and 30,000 square feet of retail/commercial space. There would be the potential to construct a couple of new buildings with green space in the parking lot area to enhance the aesthetics of the property. He has no grand plan for the property at this time. He has been talking to 3 or 4 firms about the space on the property. One firm would take all of the warehousing space with the understanding that he could take back that space at a future date. Two other firms were looking for only a portion of the warehouse space. There was more warehouse than commercial interest in the property at the present time. At the city council, they generally expressed support for the proposed use of the property as warehousing. City council also expressed support for Shell's proposed use of the portion of the building for warehouse purposes in 2020. So the approval process here to make a zoning change is as follows. So in order for the target property to be used for warehousing, the city would need to make two separate actions. One, to amend the zoning ordinance to allow wholesaling, warehousing / distribution as a conditional use in the B3 zoning district. And two, to approve a conditional use permit for the project. The city zoning ordinance currently contains the following statement. I, which equals interim permitted, the Community Development Department may, at its discretion, recommend to the applicant, the Planning Commission, and the City Council that any use designated in Table C as C or conditionally permitted may be instead considered as an interim permitted use. And what I mean by that is when you look in our ordinance, we have a table of all the uses where they are either P permitted, C conditionally permitted, or I. And you'll notice in that table that there's very few interim permitted, and that's because we have this caveat at the end of that use table that says staff can make a recommendation to have some type of use be interim permitted for this site rather than conditionally permitted for this site. And that would then come to you all to make that decision. Amendment information. The city zoning ordinance has the following definitions. Wholesale sales, which is the establishment or places of businesses primarily engaged in the selling of merchandise to retailers, to industrial, commercial, institutional, or professional business users, or to other wholesalers. Wholesale establishment does not include a contractor's materials or office or retail sale of businesses / supplies, business supplies / office equipment. Warehousing, structures used for the storage or distribution of goods, manufactured products, supplies, and equipment where there is no sale of items to the retailer or general public unless permitted as an accessory use to the warehouse. Warehousing and distribution facility, an established engaged in the storage or movement of goods such as manufactured products, supplies, equipment, or food. And then lastly, distribution, the storage, wholesale, distribution of manufactured products, supplies, and equipment. So wholesaling, warehousing / distribution is a permitted use in the I-1 Planned Industrial Zoning District, the I-2 General Industrial Zoning District, and CM, which is the Commercial Manufacturing Zoning District, and as a conditional use in the B2, which is the General Business Zoning District, and the I-3 Limited Industrial Zoning Districts. City zoning ordinance has the flexibility to consider a request as either an interim or a conditional use, as I stated earlier. Both conditional use and interim use permits allow the Planning Commission to attach certain conditions deemed pertinent or necessary to a specific location or request. Conditional use permits have no end date and run with the property. They can be revoked if conditions are violated. Interim use permits are temporary in nature and can be approved up to a period of 5 years. After 5 years, the interim use permit can be renewed, but would be received by the Planning Commission as if it were a new application. As noted earlier, the only item under consideration at this meeting is whether or not to consider amendment to the zoning ordinance to allow wholesaling, warehousing, distribution as a conditional or interim use in the B3 zoning district. Again, this amendment would apply to all properties within the B3 zoning district in the city. This ordinance amendment is approved. The applicant could then apply for a conditional or interim use permit. The purpose, again, of the B3 Community Business District is to provide for the establishment of major retail and service centers in the city, where both adequate land area and transportation access can be provided. Such a district shall allow for the concentration of business uses that draw customers from both within and outside the community. There's a limited amount of B3 zone property in New Ulm. This district was established for commercial and retail businesses, and it is anticipated that the zoning it was anticipated that the zoning district would be small. Target property is vacant at the time, and the new zoning ordinance was prepared the target property was vacant at the time when the new zoning ordinance was amended and adopted. There were no identified uses for the property at that time. It was generally acknowledged that another big box retailer was not likely to occupy that property. There was hope that a combination of retail and commercial uses would find the location acceptable. Finding other uses for a large commercial building is a challenge. In New Ulm, the changing environment for successful commercial operations, e-commerce, proximity to Mankato, and the adaptive reuse costs can all serve as impediments to that type of development. City has 2 large structures that are located in the B2 zoning district and are not used for commercial or retail purposes. These include the buildings at 1315 South Broadway, which is now occupied by Riverbend Education District, and then at 1615 North State Street, which is now used as a warehouse by the 3M Company. So, in a survey of zoning ordinances from 22 other greater Minnesota cities, 9 of those cities, approximately 40%, allowed wholesaling, warehousing, and distribution activities in a commercial zoning district similar to our B3 zoning district. 1 allowed it with an interim use permit, the remainder by a conditional use permit. The proposed zoning amendment, we have proposed zoning amendment in your packets that was prepared by the city attorney. The amendment would modify 2 tables in the zoning ordinance. They're Table 5.5 and Table 9.1. In both tables, the land use described as wholesaling, warehouse/distribution would be allowed in the B3 zoning district with a C, which stands for conditional use permit. So, Planning Commission consideration. Does the Planning Commission believe that wholesaling, warehouse, and distribution would be an appropriate and necessary land use in the B3 community business zoning district with a conditional use or an interim use? That's the question before you. We did have 3 attachments with the staff report. We had attachment 1, which is the proposed new ordinance drafted by the city attorney. Attachment 2 is Mr. Bodie's letter to the city council. Attachment 3 is a map of the B3 zoning districts. And you can see in that map, we circled all the B3 areas in the community. Staff recommendation. Staff would recommend approval of the amendment as described in the proposed ordinance. The ordinance would provide additional flexibility in dealing with potential land uses for properties in the B3 zoning district. Given the current commercial and retail landscape, it only makes sense to allow wholesaling, warehousing, and distribution as a potential land use. Requiring a conditional or interim use permit would allow another level of review and discussion that would help determine that the proposed use would be an appropriate use of the property. Lastly, we have 2 motions. One to recommend approval of amendment of Table 5.5 and Table 9.1 of Appendix A of the City Code as described in the attached ordinance, and then one denying changing the zoning ordinance. That concludes the staff report.
Thank you. I want to get to the map again. Okay, my question was, because you mentioned in your staff report Riverbend and the 3M property, and they are not in B3 districts now?
Those are in B2 zoning
B2s.
districts.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
the reason that we provided those in the staff report was examples of what formerly were retail commercial buildings that have now been converted to, a non-retail commercial use.
and I'm just looking at the map now because it would potentially change these 2 zoning districts.
It would allow warehousing and wholesale distribution as a condition, potential, we're recommending a conditional use
Conditional,
in that zoning district.
okay. in both of these zoning districts.
It would be for the entire B3 zoning district in the city.
That's right. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I was looking at the maps to see how big an area it was, and it's not a big deal. Okay.
And John, if I'm hearing you correctly, what we're approving here today, he'll come back for how he wants to use the property at a later date, and we could do that as an interim and put so many years on it or such and such of a use for the property.
So the ordinance in front of you today has this proposed use listed as a C, conditional use permit. So staff is asking for recommendation to the city council to approve or to recommend the amendment as written, as it's provided today. But you're correct in the fact that anything listed as a C in our use table, staff and the city can make changes to that and request an interim use permit rather than a conditional use permit based on site-specific criteria.
And I think that's a good idea, because you don't know the future for the property and stuff like that, to have the interim, in there until maybe retail comes back for the property entirely or something. Or we don't know that yet.
I would also note, though, that we cannot prohibit an applicant from applying for a conditional use permit. If we do not agree with the particular application, then we would deny it, but that the applicant retains that right.
Sure.
Well, yeah, and I was having kind of the same issue. If we have to grant a conditional use permit, I was having a little bit of problems separating that this is just a change to a city document, allowing B3s to change to the as stated, but everything is tied to what Mr. Bodie is stating he wants to do with the property percent. So I'm trying to alienate my mind from what I'm already read that said he's going to use it for 3 years as this and then go back and reconsider this, but yet he has no plans for the future, and I understand all that. But why is that? I'm wondering why it was presented that way, other than the fact that he's the one applying.
Well, he's made the request to the city to amend our zoning
Okay.
ordinance. So Community Development Department is therefore presenting an amendment to the zoning ordinance to you
Okay.
today.
Sorry, Mr. Bodie, but I'm disassociating you from. Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions and it is a public hearing if anybody from the floor wishes to address. No one has any more questions? If not, I'm going to close the public hearing portion of this meeting and call for a motion.
I'd recommend the approval of the amendment to Table 5-5 and 7-1 of Appendix A of the City Code as described in the attached ordinance.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? This goes to the city council when?
January 3rd.
January 3rd. Thank you. Pardon me?
4th.
4th? Okay. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is consider for approval the final plat of the Trail Edition.
Okay, now, if you wouldn't mind, there have been no changes to this plat from the preliminary, and if you wouldn't mind, I would like to jump all the way to the conditions.
Okay.
Do want to note that the street address for this property is 229 Center Street / 228 First South Street, generally located south of Center Street and north of First South Street and east of the post office. So the preliminary plat was approved by the city council. This is the final plat. Status of the conditions. So there were two points here. One, that the applicant pay the platting fee of $235, and that condition is complete. Second is to provide an electronic file of the plat in AutoCAD 2016 or newer format. and we have provided notice to the land surveyor that we will need that. We had 2 attachments here. Attachment 1 was the final plat. Attachment 2 is the site location map. Staff would recommend approval of the final plat with the conditions since it complies with the city code requirements. The condition we had was, to complete condition number 1, so we have to pay the platting fee of $235. My apologies. Potential motions, we had 1 to recommend approval and then 1 to recommend denial of the trail addition with 1 condition. That concludes the staff report.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Got no questions. I'm going to offer approval of the final plot of the trail addition with 1 condition, as stated.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Communications, received communication from Dale Bushard requesting a change to the city zoning regulations to allow a residential dwelling unit in a B2 general business zoning district.
So the applicant / property owner here is Dale Bushard. The legal description is lot 8 through 10, block 161 north of Center Street, except parcel 231B on MnDOT plat number 8-12. The street address is 927 20th North Street. Property location is east of North Garden Street and south of US Highway 14 / 20th North Street. Background on this application. There is no deadline for a decision. The land use designation in the comprehensive plan is business. Surrounding land uses in the comprehensive plan include business to the east, to the south, high-density residential, to the west, business, and then to the north, public, semi-public. Zoning designation for this property is the B2 General Business District. Surrounding zoning includes the B2 to the east. To the south, we have the R4 High Density Residence District. To the west, B2. And to the north, the AOS Agricultural Open Space. That is the public cemetery across the road. Current site use is the office and former monument sales and production site. Current area uses, to the east is an auto repair shop. To the south, it's a 12-unit apartment. To the west, it is vacant, and then to the north is a cemetery. There was no notice in the journal regarding this correspondence, and there has not been any public comment. The request is as follows. Mr. Bushard purchased the property on September 14th, 2022. Property was zoned B2 at that time. Property was zoned R3 effective October 1, 1968. Property was then rezoned to B2, the Service Business District, on October 5th, 1976. Residential uses were not a permitted use in that zoning district. City approved an amendment to the zoning amendment on December 17th, 2019 to allow residential units in the B2 zoning districts located specifically in the downtown area with a conditional use permit. The subject property was rezoned to B2 General Business District on March 1, 2022 with the adoption of the new zoning ordinance. The purpose of the B2 General Business District is to provide for a wide range of vehicle-oriented businesses and service uses, as well as limited industrial activities adjacent to major roadways that provide access and exposure. B2 zoning districts are generally located along major roadways in the city of New Ulm, including North and South Broadway, the downtown area, 7th North Street, and then 20th South Street. So the Planning Commission has sort of 3 options here. One is to rezone the property to a zoning district which is in which residential units would be permitted. 2, to allow a residential dwelling unit as a conditional use in the B2 zoning district. I should note that in the B2 zoning district throughout the city, in our zoning ordinance, we carried over that amendment from 2019, where we still allow residential uses in the B2, specifically in the downtown area. Okay, this would expand that. And then 3, to deny the request and consider after the completion and adoption of the updated comprehensive plan, which is estimated to be done kind of mid-year in 23. Attachments, we have 3 attachments. Attachment number 1 is Mr. Bushard's letter and building plans to the Planning Commission. Attachment number 2 is zoning ordinance, city zoning ordinance, section 9.2E, regulations for designated residential uses. And then attachment 3 is the map of the B2 zoning districts. So the Planning Commission's consideration. Does the city believe that the city zoning regulations should be amended to allow residential dwelling units in the B2 zoning district, general business district with a conditional use permit? And should the updated comprehensive plan be completed and adopted prior to making changes to residential uses in business zoning districts? Staff's recommendation would be that we deny the request and reconsider the request following the update and adoption of the city's comprehensive plan. And again, that would be sometime mid-year in 2023. We have 2 potential motions. One, to recommend either a denial of this proposal or 2, to recommend approval. That concludes the staff report.
Does Mr. Bushard have concur with the denying? Is he okay with waiting? Is Mr. Bushard?
I think we've been, Dale Bushard, New Ulm, I think we've been waiting for years. The building's been empty. There's nothing happening there. I'd like to put the apartment on top and operate a business out of the bottom as a rental. And it's another useful property if it's fixed up and maintained in the community, which we've been at it for a few years, fixing some up. We did First South gas station, and hopefully we could do something. I think there's other ones like it on 12 South and Broadway, 1800 North Broadway, 800 North Minnesota, apartments on top, and business underneath. Sits next to an apartment,
Right.
12 units. And out in front, we're looking at doing 2 offices that'll be on Broadway.
Okay. So the question was, is what John was saying is deny now, wait till we get through our comprehensive plan update and then reconsider. So it would basically just be removing it from the table now, right? And moving it down the road to another date? Is that what the staff's request, am I reading that right? That's why I asked if, because that makes sense.
Yes, that is an option. And we in our staff kind of provided 3 options to you, but then gave our
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I can comment on Mr. Munson's question. Normally, the order in which, from a zoning standpoint, you approve your documents, the first thing you do is you have a current comprehensive plan, and then you adjust your zoning ordinance to reflect what's in your comprehensive plan. What this would do is turn that around. And this is not an insignificant change, because this would not apply just to this property. There's no way that we can take this piece of property and say, okay, this property gets a residential unit on top of it. If we decide that that's appropriate, then we would have to do it for all B2 zoning districts throughout the city. And if you look at the zoning map that was provided in the staff report, there are a number of them. So this isn't a casual undertaking.
So Dave, currently our B2 runs from, in the downtown district, but, Mr. Bushard gave a couple examples of, like above JP Plumbing on North Broadway, there's a residential unit above the plumbing shop, and a couple other ones that are on the Broadway street. How would this differ, I guess, stating?
Well,
know.
yeah, those apartments were there when our zoning ordinance was amended back in '68. So, we have the same situation where we have mixed land uses. I mean, go down to Goosetown and I can find you all sorts of residential units sitting in industrial zoning district. So that's something that you deal with. But what you do try to do is identify what the land use is that you want for the property for the future. And you start that process by having an updated comprehensive plan.
Okay, and the land was purchased while it was in that zoning district anyway, so it'd be difficult. I mean, there's like 12 B2 districts if I'm looking at this, scattered throughout the city. 12 at least, yeah. That would be affected by this. I'm leaning to tabling or
Question for staff, is there any anticipated date when the new plan will be adopted?
the comprehensive plan goes to the end of the year, or is it's middle of next year? Correct.
That's their plan, is to have it done hopefully by August.
I see.
If you looked at the schedule that was sent out to the project committee, I believe those meetings went into maybe mid-May. So I would expect there would be a wrap up, fairly soon after that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
August would be a reasonable time
By
frame.
the time it's adopted and everything.
But we would also have the option to do it under a conditional use permit to allow it. Recommendation tonight.
No.
No?
So that option does not exist currently. That is an option if for some reason you decided to proceed with this.
So you're saying if we accept this, then he gets a conditional use permit option? At this
No.
point, no?
No, we first would have to amend the zoning district. Then we would have to have the applicant go through the conditional use permit process.
So making this amendment doesn't mean that we will all of a sudden be having a bunch of residential dwellings popping up in our B2, because they would still, it just gives them the option and they would have to come back to us with the conditional use permit to have that residential dwelling, correct?
That would be
That
one
is
option.
correct.
Yep.
So what would, in the staff's perspective, besides that we would be going out of order, that piece of it aside, say the comp plan's already been approved, we're right back to where we are right now in this moment, what is the negative of approving something like this?
Because the comp plan is in process now? Yeah.
Taking that piece out of the equation,
But we could also,
what would be the reason why
Well-
we, that would be detrimental to do this now? My logic being, if the comp plan goes through and we end up right back where we are we making this process delay 6 months just to come right back to where we are right now anyway and have the same question in front of us?
Well, I think that one of the considerations that the planning commission has to look at is, are dwelling units in B2 zoning districts appropriate? How many dwelling units in the B2 zoning district? What about parking? And what about issues associated with business activities that impact those dwelling units? We've got a lot of experience in dealing with those types of things And so I think you need to think about, what we're doing.
I guess I'd like to add that, our comp plan, we all know that we need housing at the end of the day. And so you have properties that are challenging properties and, if you want to make them developable for owner occupied business or potentially rent it until you have a use for it and it provides adequate parking, on the site. I guess my question to Mr. Bushard would be here, is this a property all one lot, or is there multiple lots here?
Three lots, there's 2 lots on Broadway that face Broadway. Or
The
14.
property can currently be developed as a business, though. And
Correct.
that's what he wanted to develop. He wanted a business plus residence, but it could be developed as, he could put the businesses in.
But to take it a step back further, though, this request is my opinion, if I'm understanding correctly, the request you have before us really has nothing to do with Mr. Bushard, besides he's the one bringing it to the table, similar to what we just did with Bodie. Like, that piece of it kind of just disappears. So we're just looking at this all as in a whole.
Yeah.
Right?
Which would
Ms.
lead me to-
Ms. Aukas's description is correct.
And so since we've all been a part, for the most part, of the comprehensive plan up to this point, we've been a part of those conversations. To your point, housing is a really big issue. That's not going to change. That's what's going to be included more than likely in the comprehensive plan. So my question is, why would we delay this and not go ahead and continue forward?
Because I'd like to know what's decided in the comprehensive plan. There may be 50 other ideas in that comprehensive plan than this one.
I would also point out that we have not had a discussion with the project steering committee about land use. So I think it's difficult to assume that at this point in time, what will and will not be in the comp plan.
Dave, when for that discussion, do you anticipate that discussion being in an upcoming comp plan meeting with our consultant? Perhaps here in January, or where would you envision that discussion taking place?
I believe it's scheduled for our February meeting of the project steering committee.
I guess in my opinion, though, well, I agree that this is a big change. At the same time, they would still need to come to us with a conditional use permit, so it's not like we're all of a sudden allowing all of these houses to come into B2s. Unless I'm getting that wrong, and please correct me. Or
I think the
B3s,
way
excuse
Dave
me.
said, we'd have to update our zoning to get am I correct by that?
We'd have to update our current zoning ordinance, yes.
So we'd have to, we gotta flip-flop, kind of.
I just have a real problem changing a zoning plan while we're in the middle of doing a comprehensive plan to determine what our zoning plan is going to be.
Or if we go into it.
Because I don't think 50 million residences are going to appear between now and the end of next August when we have adopted a proper plan. This is one request.
But we did adopt our zoning ordinance before the comprehensive plan was completed, correct? So aren't we, to that end, it's
No,
already
the
kind
comp
of
plan,
backwards?
just correct me if I'm wrong, but the comp plan would adjust zoning ordinances where necessary, or the interpretation of zoning ordinances?
Well, I mean, after the comp plan's adopted, it would be a good time to take a hard look at the zoning ordinance again to make
That's
sure
when it would
we're
happen.
making sure they mesh up. But to
But we
Ashley's
did already
point,
do it once,
yes,
correct?
to Ashley's point,
Before the comp plan was done.
our current comp plan is 2007. The
what's-
zoning ordinance was adopted this April.
So it's not that old of a document. So we're not going to be that far off. It's the same people doing the same doc for the most part. Like,
And we have the housing currently in the downtown district where we've adopted it, where he has a similar property on First South.
The reason that we made the zoning change for the downtown area is that we allow zoning in the B1 zone, we allow zoning in the B3. The only place we didn't allow it was in the B2 in the downtown area. So we had these islands of B2 zoning, which didn't make any sense. And so I think that was one of the primary reasons for going ahead with that change. I might note that though was done, before we retained the current consultant to look at our comprehensive plan.
I definitely understand. Usually I am one that is very I like to follow the process to a T. But in this situation, I just feel like kicking the can down for another 6 months when I don't have a crystal ball, I can't predict the future, but I totally see us right back here having the same discussion, passing it because it makes sense. So why wait? But
Depending on how everybody decides here tonight, worst case scenario, I'd like it to be our main topic for February. I mean, right now we know we can't build anyways, with the current weather conditions, and the earliest would probably be April or May, but potentially, that's just my out loud thought. But I think we should, as a commission, talk about it. We'll have a few new commissioners and discuss it in February if we think it's a worthy to pursue to allow the housing in the B2, and then maybe bring it back.
The only thing you can't plan for the front, what we're gonna do out front with brand new and parking and so forth, if you can't put apartment up there, it's gonna decide how we do the front for parking. I know you gotta have parking, but makes a decision.
But for your residential unit, you got a garage already, and you got another spot for your residential. You need 1.5 units of parking for your units, for your housing, but I think you
For the front, that's what it does. But you gotta know.
Are there any questions? Further discussion? Motions?
would it be possible to table this one until we meet as a commission further to discuss with our consultant in February on this issue? And then
And that's what staff's
Keep it-
recommending,
Staff is
right?
recommending it.
That's
Well-
what you guys
Well,
are
they gave
recommending.
us
Staff
three
would
options.
recommend denial of the request and reconsider the request following the update of the comprehensive plan. So staff's recommending tabling this, really.
it's the
Denying
length of
it,
the
but
table that's
it's-
differentiating. Yeah.
I guess I'm looking not to go through the full, result, but be nice as a commission to see
Right.
where we're at with it and then come back and
Right. Well, in there too, we're
Give some
we're at the
findings.
end of
I think we need to
December.
make it specific that it's not at this meeting, at our planning commission meeting, because you're saying you want it discussed in the February
Dave said it's on
comp
this-
plan meeting, so then it would be the March.
No, it could go to the February planning commission meeting.
Right, because our
Is that
steering
after
committee
it?
should be in early February or mid-February, and the planning
That's what I
commission.
want to make straight, that which cart is
You would-
before which horse.
It would be a separate meeting.
Yeah.
Meeting, and our comprehensive plan steering committee meetings have typically been second week of that month. So we would still have time to bring it to the planning commission the
All right.
last Thursday of that month.
All right. I need a motion for that. If that's what,
I would make a motion as the staff recommendation that we deny this request now and reconsider a future request pending our steering committee comprehensive conversations that have already planned and discussed. I think it makes sense. We're 6 weeks out from that time. 6 weeks isn't gonna but I decide this issue then. But we'll have more information, plus we'll know where we'll address that issue. Because and others perhaps like it because, you know, as we peel back the layers here, we find ourselves confronted with an issue that puts our comprehensive plan conversations and everyday requirements in front of us. That's something that we have to have, you know, what other ones are we gonna encounter? So I would make a motion that we table this.
Did you say table? You said deny earlier.
Well, the recommendation is, you know, to me, table, deny now, return later. It just gives us that
I
latitude.
need a formal motion that not table or deny. I need one or the other for the record. So your
So
motion,
following the recommendation, I would motion that we would deny the request and reconsider the request following the update as proposed by
okay.
the staff, as stated here.
Okay, I have a
I
mo,
agree with Ashley.
So if it's as, if it's as
Please end your
stated though,
motion.
then you're looking at the adoption of the city comp plan.
So I think you gotta put a timeline or.
Right.
We need
If
a
we say
second.
it as stated, then yes, we're precluding Mr. Buschard and coming back until after that's adopted or decided.
can I state your motion? To deny the request and reconsider after the completion of an adoption of the comprehensive plan, we would like to amend that to say, deny the request and reconsider after our February comprehensive plan steering committee meeting. Comments?
That's acceptable.
That's acceptable.
I agree with that. That's
Second to that motion.
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion? Dave, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, thank you.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it'll be reconsidered in February. So Mr. Buschard, if he wants it on the February Planning Commission meeting, needs to come to you? Or the,
Yeah, and quite honestly, if there aren't any changes, I mean, we can take what Mr. Buschard has already given us.
and represent it at the February Planning Commission meeting? Which is the last Friday, or last Thursday in February. Thank you. City Council decisions concerning Planning Commission matters in December 2022.
Okay, at the December 6th, 2022 meeting, there was a public hearing on the 2023 annual city budget. At the December 20th, 2022 meeting, the council approved the preliminary plat of the trail addition. They received an order filed communication from Eric Bodie on the target property. They adopted the 2023 New Ulm, City of New Ulm budget and property tax levy. They also approved ordinance number 2022-67, rezoning property to PUD -1 at 1800 North Highland Avenue for the Dreamville project, which is 7.45 acres, and the Ryan Road right-of-way. They approved the development agreement for the Dreamville project, and then finally they approved with conditions the final plat of the Dreamville NU addition. They also approved ordinance 2022-68, rezoning of property to R2 at 633 to 653 Haberly Avenue, and that was 0.79 acres. That was it for the city council action items.
Is that it?
That's it.
Comprehensive plan update?
Okay. So just a couple highlights here. The stuffers for the survey are going out in the city utility bills next second week in January. There's about 6,300 that are going out. We're hoping to get a total of 1,000 responses on that second survey. When we talked to the consultants last Wednesday, they had over 500 already. So the last time we met as the steering committee, which was a little over a month ago, we only had like 140.
Mhm.
We've already made a major jump. I'd expect again that we'd have another major jump after sending this out in the utility bills. The next steering committee meeting is going to be January 18th. That's virtual, and that's going to be from 4 to 6 p.m. If you don't want to do it from your house, we'll reserve the basement conference room, and we can all do that meeting together.
I have one question about the comp plan. Did you, have you been taking things like to Rotaries or does the school to,
Great question. So the civic organizations, that's been kind of a shotgun approach. But the school district, the superintendent has given it to his principal, and that has been sent out to all the high school students
oh, excellent.
if they're willing to fill it out. Because if you remember from the last time we met, we're getting some preliminary results from the survey, and it's very obvious that people basically 22 and under are not doing the survey. Almost everybody that's doing the survey is in that 39 to 44-ish range. So we're kind of missing the high and the low end, and we want to make sure to cover that as well. So that's going to be a priority to get that out there to those folks.
I know that I did see something in the paper about it when we had talked about it after that last thing. Is there any way we can hit that group other than the mailing? That age group? I don't want
Good
you going to a
question.
pep rally or anything, but
Good question. That's something that we can certainly explore. I know with seniors in New Ulm, we do try to work with CAST as much as possible and are ready and willing to ever do presentations for them and talk to them about it. And also we have it set up so at the public library, if you're not very familiar with using a computer and doing a survey like that, they have staff that's willing to help you walk through it. Otherwise, people can come visit
Okay.
me and I'll help them too.
okay. Is that it? Heritage preservation?
With Zabo building official, we had one item come in for review, was the awning signage at the Snowdrop Winery, and that passed. So that was it.
Okay. Is that the one down?
It's the Mona Lisa, old Mona Lisa.
Okay, are they taking that signage off the front of the building?
I don't know what's going on there yet.
'Cause that's always been an irritation for me, because it's like, it's like signage that would normally be allowed in windows, but they
Yeah.
picture windowed it and put it on the bottom face of their window, or their building, so.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
thank you. Is there any other business to come before the commission?
Yeah, we have one last thing.
Is this to say goodbye to Mike Firth?
Yeah, to say goodbye and thanks to Mike for serving on the planning commission. He started here on October 17th, 2017. So he's technically done 1.5-ish. But I did want to make a couple comments. Number one, I think we all appreciate your perspective and your insight on everything that comes here. You have a very even keeled mindset and help everybody make decisions well. Two, you were part of a pretty monumental process of upgrading the city's zoning ordinance and committed a lot of extra time. So we really appreciate that and bringing it here. And of course, now three, you're also working on the comp plan and have been part of that. You don't have to answer this now, but I think you're welcome to stay on and help with the comp plan if you see fit. But we will also include that new person that will be part of the planning commission as well, be on the steering committee. So just want to say thanks to Mike for your time.
You're
Yay,
welcome.
Mike. Yeah.
Thank
I
you,
don't want to
everybody.
applaud in front of the microphone to what happens.
Thank you. This has been a great learning experience for me, and I've really enjoyed working with the people that I've met on this commission, and it's been good work that we've done. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other business? If not, we stand adjourned. Oh,